Atepu, Assalamu alaikum, Namaste, Haru Nefer. This is Kasank Ma Keperu with another broadcast for you. And today I want to talk about mental health. But before I do that, I want you to hit the like button, subscribe to my channel if this is your first time watching, and share the video with friends and family because this is going to be an important message I want to get out there. So I want people to understand that we're living in a society where the majority of the population, whatever it is, 7 billion people on the planet, are mostly ill. They're sick. And that includes you and I. And I'm going to explain why. We're living in a society that fosters the idea that left brain thinking is the only and correct way of thinking. And because of that, our vision or our view of the world is skewed. We don't understand that the way we're operating, there's something wrong with that. Now, I'm not saying that you as an individual, something's wrong with your hardware. No, I'm saying that the software is malfunctioning, where you should have whole brain thinking, you now have left brain thinking. But that's not really what I want to get at. When my brother and I were growing up, we experienced a lot of childhood trauma. And the only way that I was able to overcome that as I got older was to get involved in things like trance induction or hypnotherapy. I saw very early on that the traditional methods, which are the Freudian methods of modern psychology, were not going to make any huge leaps to solve the problems that I was dealing with, because a lot of trauma can affect your physiology, and what happens is you have stress in the body, and you have anxiety, and you can't sleep, and then it's like a snowball effect. It just gets worse and worse and worse. So when I started to learn the traditional African religion and got involved in learning how to go to alternate states of consciousness via hypnosis or trance, that's when I was able to give myself post-hypnotic suggestions to travel back to the original source of the trauma as a child, and then reframe that or reprogram that, or put in place what I like to say a new program where I was operating at peak sufficiency. Meaning, what I did was I looked at this in terms of this. I said, things are not right. And I saw very early on. And I said, I need to start dealing with self. Now, the problem that we have in this society is the society fosters basically sick behavior, and they normalize that. Now, the thing that they'll do is, and I'm going to get into looking at certain racial racial demographics and genders so you understand what I'm saying. So, for example, African Americans, they want to say, okay, listen, why can't you guys pull yourself up by your bootstraps? America's a capitalist country where anybody can achieve anything no matter what your background is. That's a fucking lie. Okay, and let me explain why. Number one, you're dealing with the people who've coming out of slavery, and we've already proven that the trauma of slavery is carried over through generations, and it's in your DNA. You cannot expect a people who are mentally ill, and that's what a lot of the majority of African Americans suffer from, a mental illness, and they haven't been diagnosed because the society doesn't want to rectify that or diagnose them as suffering from mental illness, because there's a lot of repercussions to that, meaning that they could now go and ask for reparations and things like that. So they allow certain behaviors within the African community to be normalized, and they sanction those behaviors, knowing full well that the individuals who are engaging in those behaviors suffering from the mental illness. So what do? They then talk about having, well, you need to go to church, you may need to see a psychologist, which does not solve the problem at all. All right. In fact, many times the modern pastors and ministers actually exacerbate the problem, and a lot of that of us, and we engage in certain things like when we're overly religious to where we're going and praising Jesus. That is us having a coping mechanism. That's the only way we can cope with severe trauma of poverty and economic deprivation, is to hold on to these last vestiges of hope, and in the form of a savior, or in the form of lottery, or in the form of scratch and win numbers games. All right. And on that same notion, if you flip the coin, you'll look and you'll see that white people suffer from what we call as racism. And this is not something that's where it's in certain enclaves within white society, white supremacists. No, this is something that is a software that has been installed in them, and it causes them to act in certain ways, which is number one, xenophobic or overly aggressive behavior when it comes to people who don't look like them. And and the majority of what we call as white people on the planet have the inability to show empathy for other people who don't look like them. And that is a trait of the left brain. You have to understand this, and so we are refusing to say that the majority of people who are walking around are sick. And the reason that they're sick is because society fosters a software mechanism that allows them to act in certain ways, and then society sanctions that. Just like the majority of sociologists don't want to come up there and admit that there are social engineering programs that are very detrimental to people of low income, such as white people of low income and black people of low income. They're not going to say this, and I have a real issue with the so-called scholars and those who have these high degrees in psychology who won't come out and say the truth that people like Hitler, Mussolini, and all these individuals, they were not outliers. They represent the rule and not the exception. You understand? Because the act of racism, or what you want to call white supremacy, I don't like using those terms because the left brain thing is to label and define things, but that behavior is present. It may have been subverted or gone underground, but it's still present. If you can elect an individual like for example, I'm not for or against Donald Trump, but if you can elect an individual who says the most disgusting things against minorities, Mexicans, blacks, and stuff like that, and at the same breath prohibit Minister Louis Farrakhan from entering certain nations or being allowed to make certain speeches. How are those two things any different? You know what I mean? Like you sanction one who has the divergent behavior that's detrimental to society, and the other person whose people are suffering from a traumatic experience, and he's only reacting to the fact of that traumatic experience, but he's not able to speak and talk about it. Because again, you have a society or sanctioned by the ruling elite, the oligarchy, that wants to make sure that we legitimize ill and sick behavior, because they have a future plan for the way they want the world to turn out, which is their new world order based on Satan worship and individuals having no gender, and you can go on and on to talk about that. But when you start getting into the idea that you can solve these problems by installing a new program, new software through hypnosis or hypnotherapy, then the game changes. That's a game changer. This is exactly why you'll see that most religions that are promoted in mainstream are diametrically opposed to trance, are opposed to meditation, because those religions were created by individuals who were left brain thinkers. And this is why they see those books like the Quran, the Bible, the Torah, whatever, as actual history books and not allegories. These religions were set up as a watchdog mechanism to keep people in check and to keep them from going outside of the norm, for looking at alternative methods of healing, which are whole brain. Case in point, and this is a fabulous book that everyone should get. This is Qigong by Ra'u Nefa Amen. Now, in this book, it's kind of like diagnoses certain illnesses. For example, if you are too tribal, meaning you only look out for people who look like you, then you have to look at, okay, then there's certain internal organs that are not functioning correctly, which are the root cause of these things. If you're overly aggressive, violent, or if you're too timid, there is a organ that is in charge of that. And in the book, he prescribes not only the Qigong exercises, but the mantra of the word of power that when you recite it, invokes a certain frequency within your body, and that brings the organs back into balance. So what I'm saying is, if you look and understand whole brain thinking, It includes the idea of, yes, you can use left brain verbal discourse, like in the Freudian way, to help guide an individual to an epiphany so they can see where they're wrong, but that doesn't change their behavior. They have an understanding of why they're doing wrong, but it doesn't motivate them to change. To do that, you have to get inside through the subconscious mind, and then start to install the new programming, and also look at the ecology, meaning the total whole, and look at the organs and what organs correspond to certain illnesses, and then start to bring those organs back into balance through harmonic frequencies and through Qigong exercises, all right? And you have to understand that the left brain is always talking about things in isolation as they're on their own, and they have no relationship to other things. Whereas Chinese and African and all Indian therapeutic applications saw that it wasn't just the one thing that's just demonstration of the symptom, but the cause may be something where you don't even realize. You know, if I'm having a toothache, it could be caused by my right big toe. You know, and this is where left brain thinking and modern medicine doesn't comprehend this stuff. This is why we don't understand that even though we're looking at the reality we call the fourth dimensional experience, our vision can't see certain spectrums of the light. Meaning that if we could see those spectrums of the light, we would see spirit, interdimensional beings that exist in the same space-time continuum that we inhabit at the same time. But you can't see this. Some animals can see those spirits or those interdimensional beings, but we as humans can't. So, but when you operate based on left brain thinking, you don't look at the metaphysical. You don't look at the idea that there's spectrums of light that we can't see, or that there's things called spirits and beings that are out there, and some are benevolent, some are malevolent, and they're willing to either help us or cause more harm. But you're dealing with a society that is sick, and people within that society who are sick, and they have no interest in having you become a whole well being. They have no interest in that, which is why most of the foods you eat are poisonous, and they contain a lot of chemicals that when put together can cause cancer, can cause mental health issues. So they don't want to cause dependency like sugar. You know, your body gets dependent upon sugar. You become addicted to it. So we don't look at things like this. Another book, it's the Anthology of the I Ching, and this is a great book. So, my beloved, what I am talking about here is an ancient science of our people, how we live in antiquity, where we had a holistic way of looking and functioning, all right? When we saw that there was a problem with an individual, we never blamed the individual or a group of people. We never blamed the gender. We never blamed the race. We always said, what internal organ is not functioning? Or what we did was, if we didn't say internal organ, we classified each organ as a spirit, and we'll say what spirit is not functioning within the body. And then we appealed to that spirit, and we gave it medicine, holistic medicine, to bring it, not to kill it, not to eliminate it, but to bring it back into whole balance, because we understood that you need all the pieces, individual pieces, to function as a whole. Whereas left brain Western society sees, oh, well, you know what? We're going to concoct something called AIDS and eliminate, maybe 6 billion people on the planet, you know? So this is how they think, because they don't understand that everything is dependent upon the other for the well-being of the ecology, the whole. So their idea is that they're superfluous people and genders and races that don't need to be on this planet, and let's get rid of it. And then they justify that sick behavior by saying that the world is overpopulated, which is a damn lie. Okay, the planet is not overpopulated. We have so much room and resources. And let me tell you something: when you operate from a whole brain perspective, and I'm going to end with this, then you understand that Earth, Geb or Gaia, is a living entity. And if it thinks that the planet is overpopulated, it will then create natural disasters to eliminate whole segments of the population. It will do it because it is a consciousness, it is an intelligence, and it will do it. But Gaia, Geb, or Mother Earth has not done it because the planet is not overpopulated. So instead of looking at the planet as an inanimate object, a rock, a third rock from the sun, our ancestors looked at it as a form of consciousness, another intelligence that we can speak with, appeal to, and that it can self-govern itself. It has agency. But because Western man is ill, sick, and doesn't think that way, the left brain thinks hierarchical, so they think that they have to dominate the planet and rule the planet, not realizing that that's just a left brain way of thinking. The right brain doesn't think in terms of domination and rule and climbing the corporate ladder. It thinks in terms of harmonious existence with everything. It thinks, how can I live in cooperation with all that there is? So that's it, my beloved. Again, hit the like button if you like this video. Also, sign up for my ebooks. They're free. And we have The True Cause of Slavery, which gets deep into this and talks about how slavery is a virus that was implanted into the ether. They hacked our psyche and implanted this thing called racism. And then I have the Rape Report, which really talks about who are the true victims of rape and pillage. And then the Osiris Report is phenomenal. That gets into the metaphysical and the occult and explains how the ruling elite is controlling us. So those are free ebooks. You can sign up for them, and they make really great readings. All right, so until my next broadcast, this is Kasank Ma'at Keperu, son of Ma'at, Amen Ra.